there is that music again. And if you are hearing it, you have arrived. Whether you have come seeking answers or you have an encounter or story to tell, you've come to the right network. This is the Ropen Radio Network. I'm your host, Jacob S. Guerra. Sure hope everyone's doing well out there and staying safe on this Saturday afternoon. If you're here in Oregon, it is a beautiful weekend. It's been like that for the last week or so, as the temperatures expect to rise. My kind of weather. I always did like summer over winter. I'm not a winter person. You know, before I begin the show today, I always like to do something just a little bit different. And I don't know if any of you have seen this video on YouTube, but this is where I'm going to go with this. You'll stick with me, you'll know. Sometimes you come across something that sparks your attention and you're like, hey, you know what, I'd like to go look for more. And then, you know, YouTube is a great place to go and look, because sometimes people have a sighting and they will post it there. And that's a nice feature to have, but every once in a while you come across these videos that make it really frustrating for actual researchers. It's what I like to refer to as hoaxsters, in a sense. Pterodactyl caught on tape 2014, Flathead Lake, Montana. I was there in Montana back in March. Beautiful place. Past Flathead Lake. Didn't get a chance to go by there. Should have. More investigations come later on in the future. So if you see this one, Pterodactyl caught on tape 2014 on YouTube. I'm looking at it right now. You're going to probably be looking at it right now. It shows here an apparent LPW, living pterosaur of the world. And there's a problem with this video. I'm just going to come out right off the bat and tell you this is a fraud. First thing you think, oh wow, look at these images that they got. Okay, but there's a big problem with this video. First thing you're thinking is CGI magic? Maybe, because you can add shading and things like that and make it better. But that's not the case here. This was film stills taken from the movie War Games in 1983 with Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy. There you go. I've checked this out over and over again. I've taken a look at it. And the first thing that stuck out to me was, gosh, I remember something like this from my childhood. And then sure enough, I went and looked. It's War Games. Yeah, unfortunately, guys. It makes it worse for all of us. We're just trying to get the truth out there, and then somebody posts something stupid like this. It happens from time to time. Just be forewarned. Guys, I got a great show today, and you're in for a treat. There are people who have some amazing jobs in this world. But one that never seemed to come to mind as an explorer or a researcher is cave exploring. It's like, how do you get involved in something like that? Where does it all begin for you? Well, with my next guest, who lived in California, Central California, Fresno. What an amazing guy. What an amazing job he had. And he's still doing it. I think he's had some back issues. It's kind of kept him down for just a little bit, but I expect to see him out there again. I expect to hear more about it. Sometimes you just can't keep someone from what they love doing. And a part of that is just getting out there, being a part of the environment. This is where the real research begins. All right. I am very fortunate to have him on the network today. He's got a lot to tell, and some of it is going to be mind-boggling. He's got some encounters and some great stories to tell. And at the same time, we have to respect, this is very important, respect the privacy of where that information comes from. Because sometimes they want it to come forward, sometimes they don't. Or the names will be kept anonymous. Okay, that's not a problem here on this network. We know about doing that. Isn't that right, Anthony? Oh yeah, we know. Keep it confidential. If the speaker or the guest today or the eyewitness wishes us to do so, we will. The gentleman today is Ken Gentry. It is a pleasure to have him on the network. I heard him before. I've been following him for a while. I consider him a friend now. And you're going to meet a lot of people when it comes to this field of research that you're going to come to know and appreciate. And I'm really glad he gave us the time to come on here and share what he has. It's exciting. It's thrilling. Stick with me. Sit back for a while. Put us on Bluetooth. Whether you got some chores to do, do those chores. Take some time and listen to us. This was going to be quite a lengthy conversation, but sometimes when you have a great speaker like this, the best thing to do is let them speak, hear what they have to say, and then you can chime in with your questions as well. That's what I'm going to do here today. Please welcome Ken Gentry. We're going to make a phone call to him right now, and we're going to get this network rolling. Glad you're joining us today. Stay tuned. It's going to be exciting, educational, and fun here on the Ropen Radio Network.
Good evening, Ken here.
Ken Gentry, this is Jacob Guerra.
Hey, how you doing? Do you prefer Jacob or Jake?
I go by either one. I think what I did was originally I went by Jake, and then it seemed more sophisticated to go by Jacob.
Perhaps. I go by anything, but when it comes to Kenneth, it always reminds me of when my mom used to yell at me to take the trash out. So it seems a little too formal for me. So most of my friends is either Ken or Kenny.
Okay.
I try to go the opposite way and make it as informal as possible.
Okay, well, I like that. That works for me too.
Ain't no thing but a chicken wing. How are you this evening?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
Well, dealing with I don't know if you've caught any of this stuff, but dealing with a lower back injury. I've got a hip that's going to probably have to be replaced. And so things have gotten really weird out there in weird land when it comes to it. Started with a fall off of a ladder.
Yeah.
And I have avascular necrosis of the hip and the upper femurs. And I've just beat my body up all these years, caving and doing everything else that I do.
Yeah, but I would say you definitely have lived life to the fullest, right?
I'm definitely not going to have a problem with my biggest issue is not returning back to my regular work.
Uh-huh.
My biggest issue is getting a caving harness back on. So.
Oh, there you go.
Talk about motivation. There you are.
And you once lived in California, is that correct?
Born and raised in the Central Valley in Fresno, the agricultural heartbelt of America, and I grew up there. And then after short term in the Army, normal career, I just did 3 in, 4 out. Mm-hmm. I got married, gained a family, moved them up into the Sierras, and spent another close to 30 years there.
Really? 30 years?
They all grew up and now have families there and ranches of their own, and I have a plethora of grandchildren. I believe 17 is a plethora.
Yes, I would say that is. That's
I live back in Cali there in the Sierra Nevadas, which is actually where I started my caving crew.
Hmm. So did you? So you got into that when you lived there. What sparked your interest in it?
In caves?
Yeah.
I've been asked that on a lot of interviews, and it's hard to say. It's kind of a mixed bag of nuts. Originally in 1972, I was about 10 years old. We went on a cross the country road trip in the old car, the old family station wagon. And we went to one place that we stopped was Carlsbad Caverns. We all went down in the elevator and came down into one of the bigger rooms there. I don't know if you've ever been there, but there's a hamburger stand and a gift shop and very beautiful decorations, all decorated up with colored lights. And it's pretty spectacular, pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, my father could tell I was kind of bored with it. It was too Disneylandish, and we were raised. In fact, from then on, I was able to go from about 10 years old on into the mountains. My father was a land surveyor, civil engineer who primarily focused on cadastral surveys, which are high mountain surveys, separation of mining claims, Forest Service lands, Park Service lands, things of that nature. And I did that through the early 80s with him, and then got into construction. But again, the Colorado trip was cool. We left we ditched my mom and sister, and we went back up and went back out and took, I think it was a tram around or something, and we ended up in the natural entrance, which is where they have the big amphitheater, where every night the bats come shooting out, which is how that cavern was discovered. Anyhow, we took that natural tour back through. That was it. I was turned on. Now, my father was a natural-born explorer, mountain man, very well respected in his field, traveled abroad quite a bit, and went on a lot of adventures of his own. And that was instilled in me at an early age. We were also growing up in the mountains in the summer camps, in land survey camps, middle of nowhere, four-wheel drive in, many of them horsebacked in. We'd spend all summer up there. And so I worked with teams. I learned to work with teams in the mountains that way, to go out and find property corners and section corners and establish historical monumentation, reestablish them. And so we were trained from an early age to go out and find things that are ultra small in the middle of nowhere with a compass and a tape. It was long before GPS was ever thought of.
Yeah.
You learn how to work with a crew and rely on each other. That built into our little own explorations. And later on, we started doing some rope work in some trees and started doing some rope work on cliffs. And then we started finding some small local caves.
Yeah. This
is probably when I was about 27, 28. And I'm just about 60 now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we started exploring a few caves. We found this common interest we all had together. Excuse me, allergies.
Oh, that's good.
I'm in Springfield, Eugene. You're in Salem, right?
Yep, not too far. Not too far.
Yeah. So you know the allergy problems we have here in the Willamette Valley.
Oh, yeah. My brother got a major allergy problem with Mount St. Helens when it erupted.
Oh, what is that?
Oh, well, that was back in 1980. He was really affected by it, so he's kind of lingered with him for a long time. Now he's got an allergy issue.
Oh, boy. Yeah, so it re-sparked up when I had the problem when I was a kid. But anyway, so that's kind of my background. That's how we got started, and then just kind of grew from there. I mean, nobody gets up one morning and goes, hey, I'm going to go start a caving team. It gradually progressed to that.
Yeah. It's kind of like with me, when I was a kid, I did want to be an explorer. And it wasn't until the last 20 years that things started to just come about with me, as I felt like I was being more and more led to go on certain adventures and then seeking evidence and truth and some of these things that point out to the creatures that are being seen around our world, which we'll be talking about soon here. And then
right.
In the last 5 years, I think I felt a lot of push to just finally get involved more so than ever. And I was like, yeah, I can feel this coming. Something needs to change. And for the longest time, I worked in politics for about a decade. And I worked out at the hospital.
Hey, you survived it, huh?
I did survive it. I learned a lot.
Cool.
It was a nice experience because you learn a lot on how to treat people with professionalism. I love that.
Right.
Because when you go into regular jobs, people don't really understand what that means to treat someone with respect and hold yourself high with dignity.
No, they call that old school now. It's like, it's not old. It's just proper.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably more raised Leave It to Beaver style. But my parents...
Sure. Similar here.
Yeah, my parents, they just wanted better for me, and they understood my passion and what I was really involved in, and they always encouraged me, and I appreciate that from them. They passed away at a very young age, and I'm glad I'm still going. So I'm happy.
Sorry to hear. Yeah, I lost mine many, many years ago, I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, very supportive parents go a long ways with the rearing of a child, paying attention to their interests.
Aside from your issues with would you say your back's giving you a problem?
It's I'm gonna be facing hip replacement probably in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So I'm undergoing rehabilitation in order to make that happen.
I see. Yeah. Well, I hope you're.
But I'll be back out. I'll be back out with the boots on. I have 4 pairs of shoes. 3 of them are boots.
Right on. You need boots for that, that's for sure. When you did that job, Ken, were you search and rescue as well?
Well, I was for a while. My father was for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was a search and rescue back in Fresno, California, and even with the STAR team for a while. We did some offhand work for search and rescue. We knew a lot of the Fresno County sheriffs that run that. Excuse me. And like I said, my father was in it for 30 years. If we were on a land survey somewhere and someone was lost, we would at least grab up all of our forward drives. And the job would stop. I don't care how big it was or how close we were finishing. And any of the crew members that wanted to be involved, heck, they were left on the clock. And we would go out and we would shuttle sheriffs and equipment around to wherever they needed to be because we had quite a few forward drives. And so we did that all the time. And then I got with the Mountain Valley Fire Department in Squaw Valley, which is just above Fresno. Oh, the last few years I was in Squaw Valley, which would be prior to 2012. I moved here in, I believe it was July of 2012.
And how do you feel about Oregon so far?
How do I feel about Oregon? Oh, I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I think politically it's got its challenges, just like California, Washington, and many, many other places.
Yeah.
I mean, there's challenges everywhere in every direction. But other than that, I mean, it's just a beautiful state. I love the coastline. I love the Cascades, Siskiyous.
Yeah.
I fish a lot. I don't hunt anymore, but when I'm hunting, it's usually for a printer hare. and that was thrust upon us as well. I mean, it really was. My introduction into what I'm going to call all of you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds separatist, doesn't it? What I'm saying is that I never knew there was such a giant interest in paranormal and cryptozoological species.
Yeah.
Until we had a few incidents that we couldn't explain that was already very well respected. We had a few incidences. We brought some people in that we contacted that were familiar with the subject more than we were. We'd seen a few things, and you know, by the way, I did a lot of guide work. I had even done guide work for the people from the BFRO, the Bigfoot Research Organization, long before Finding Bigfoot ever came out.
Yeah.
And some of the people I met with were some of the greatest people in the world. I've had difficulties with Matt, you know. I didn't find him credible when I first met him, but that's a private view. Mm-hmm. It's just my own opinion. But anyway, so we were involved in doing searches. They would contact us as the regional kind of experts for the area for trails, accessibility, things like that, and they would take their groups out of their paid groups, you know, which is cool. You can go out and do this vacation with them, and you pay a fee, and you can go out and, you know, set camera traps, and they'll take you down the creeks, and they'll take you for, you know, Bigfoot hunts, and, you know, cool. Or float your boat and keep the bills paid, that's fine. But we just work with them, and we didn't contact them. We contacted some other people I just read recently when we had our big problem in 2007, our biggest issue. I contacted a guy named David Rigoza. He's principal in Fresno, California. He's actually just outside of Fresno. And he works for a school district just out in the outlying areas east of Fresno. And a great guy, just a fantastic guy. And he did this article for the Fresno Bee about Bigfoot, about him and his wife's experience, which was a sighting. They were camping. They were up in the Sierras in Fresno County, bordering the Tulare County. Actually, whether that was closer, it was probably more Tulare County. I don't give those locations exactly. They don't give you regions, you know, most of the time. But let's say it's something to do with us. Anything to do with us, we give you the exact spot and time. This is where it was. Good luck getting there. One of our point phrases with our group is our adventure begins where the trail ends. Mm-hmm. And it could not be truer. It just could not be truer.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I contacted him. And he'd already been in doing a lot of research with other people. I met all these great people. And well, they wanted to come back up into the region with us. We were actually hunting. I don't know if you've ever read the report. I published a partial trip report of our trip looking for a legendary tree. Are you familiar with the gigantic redwoods? Not the coastal redwoods, but the Sequoia Dendron giganteum, I think they're called, the giant redwoods, the sequoias and Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park. About 75 belts of them, or pockets of them, ranging from east of Bakersfield, Southern Valley, up into the high mountains, going as far north as Yosemite, and a few pockets north of there. And they're the largest living things on Earth.
Right.
And we'd heard about this one because of a cave. And it's an odd story of how that even happened. But anyway, we heard about this large tree. And we knew something about it because it was mentioned in some of the climbers' reports on how to get to a cave called Palmer Cave.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about this legendary tree, and that's one of the trails to be able to get around to a place called Homer's Nose. This is outside of the South Fork. Yeah, it was a South Fork of Three Rivers, which was the Kaweah River, outside of Three Rivers, California, which is Tulare County, just south of Fresno County, but again up in the mountains. So anyway, we had done Palmer Cave a number of times, and I read a report about a waterfall a year after that. That was being looked for, a legendary waterfall in a very small park, and one of the things it was called Whiskey, I can't remember now, Whiskey Jug, Whiskey something. It's a small national park, it could be a state park, in Northern California. And there was this legendary 400-foot waterfall that nobody could find, and it wasn't a very big park. I was like, well, how do you miss a waterfall? You know, I mean, that's nuts, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was a kid cleaning out a desk at their visitor center. We were changing the furniture up, and he found this handwritten map. So then he goes out and tries to find this thing from this handwritten map that somebody had turned into the visitor center. No date on it, but it was very old. It was caught up underneath the drawer.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets interested, but couldn't find anything, and it was very vague. He goes back to one of the rangers, and he tells him about it. And then the ranger gets turned on, so they turn the subject back on again. And they start looking through aerial photography that was done for tree counts for harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking through these things, and they find this white dot. Then the kid goes out with bearings and distances and prior to GPS, and goes and tries to find it. Couldn't find it. Asked the ranger to help them, and they were able to locate this white dot, and the white dot was the waterfall. The reason nobody had ever found it was because it was in a creek that was underground, so it was a spring, a very large spring. And it came out of the ground, shot down over 400 feet, and went underground again.
Oh.
So it wasn't on a creek. Everybody had been looking on a creek for this waterfall. Anyway, so that kindled my interest in looking for this tree. Well, if you can miss a 400-foot waterfall, why can't you miss a 240-foot tree that has more than 60,000 board feet of wood in it?
Yeah.
Turns out you can. So we started doing some research on it, and we got more and more information. We had more information out than the Park Service does or anything. And we started doing these searches in that region. It's a region it's just below a rock feature called Homer's Nose. I think I linked you into a partial trip report where it discusses that. Okay. On that particular trip, and we had done a couple priors to establish where we could put a base camp. We knew we were going to be up there for several days each trip. And we knew it was going to be very difficult terrain. And when people said, well, how can you miss a redwood? We came up on 40 or 50 redwoods that were larger in size than trees.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that night, this would be the second night in, it was a Saturday night, and we had taken 3-day weekend for 4 days. We had an incident. Something happened. We were in it was a very high snow melt year. So the creek we were on, which is Cedar Creek, which you'll see if you look at a topo map or a quad map of that region below Homer's Nose, and that's where we had our incident, by the way.
Okay.
You're going to see the convergence of two Cedar Creeks. That's where our base camp was. Well, we'd gotten back down to our base camp that evening. We're having some dinner, and we're going over our maps and trying to recalculate how we're going to be able to do this the following day. And so we weren't sure exactly how we were going to do it. And we were having this big discussion. It was all cool. I think we even shared a few drinks, so we brought a little shine with us. We took a few, mixed that up with a little bit of Gatorade. You had yourself a high mountain drink, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we were having some fun. We all went to sleep. Some of us were down next to the creek. There was no place where everybody could sleep together. There's always places. Some of the guys were using suspension hammocks. Some were just finding a little rocky shelf they weren't going to fall off of or roll off of. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, I didn't know this, and neither did Gene's footsteps or a couple of the guys who were down by me, down next to the creek. We couldn't hear the screams of our guys or the screams on the mountain that were screaming at them. And they were afraid to even come down and get us. They didn't even want to get out of their sleeping bag even to take a leak. And they were scared. And rocks were being thrown down the hill and rolling down. And one of them hit Joe Rosales, who was actually a pastor who was with us. And it was just medium-sized rock injury damage, no damage. We get up the next morning, and now it's daylight. These boys have been up all night. They couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And they start telling us about everything. Well, when daylight started to break, that was when they got us, or started to break, that's when they got us all up. And they're telling us about this crazy night they had. And we go up on the hill, we're working the hill around a bit, and we realize in a complete circle around our whole crew on both sides of that creek, probably within about 100 feet of where we were sleeping, there was some birch trees in there, or what they call they were a creek birch. And they were all snapped off about 4 or 5 feet tall, some of them 5-6 inches in diameter. There's no way you and I could snap one off. No way.
Yeah.
But there were dozens and dozens, and all pointed the same direction. And it was just creepy. Like, what the heck? And then we find this print. We're crossing that same creek as we suited back up to go back up and go to work, and we were all amazed by it, but still, we're trying to find our tree.
Yeah.
So, with everybody thinking about this event from the night before, when we go back up, couldn't find it. The next night, pretty much non-eventful, or no events rather. And then we come back down, everything's fine. We leave, get off the mountain, everything's fine. And then we had to go back. A television crew wanted to come up and monitor. It was channel 26 KMPH out of Fresno, California, wanted to send a reporter with us to embed with us for this search for this giant. This fantastic tree, which, the reports of it go back over 100 years.
Sure.
So we went up and tried to find an easier way to get into that base camp. To no avail. The only way to get there was to go up through Cedar Creek, which was horrible. And we're doing it with 60, 70-pound packs.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And it was the only way to get there. And so we're going to be helping them carry the TV equipment and stuff. So it was 3 of us. And we went up, and we couldn't find a better way. We stopped and we had some lunch. And we'd already been with some Bigfoot people. And I just say Bigfoot people, I don't mean to sound odd or weird, but some Bigfoot folks.
Mm-hmm.
We'd already met with them. They were telling us about the tree knocking and knocking of rocks and whooping form and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I started goofing around, and there was 3 of us, like I said, myself, Gene's Footstones, and Billy Lovewell, and all just wonderful, respectable gentlemen, love them to pieces, still do. We're all still tied in together through our caving group, and we started knocking on some trees, just for fun. We just take a big dry branch and hit a nice big dry snag, and I'll be damned, we didn't get answered back. We're like, okay, there's nobody up here. There was nobody in the parking lot where that trailhead is when we got there that morning. There was nobody. There's nobody that could have passed us on the trails coming up because we're real great hikers. And there's only one trail that gets you up to the region. Then you're on no trail from there.
Mm-hmm.
We're absolutely certain there's no human being that would have been up there unless they were a hunter or something that came in from the other side, which would be the Mineral King side, which is very, very difficult to get there that way, but it could have happened. Anyway, we knock some more.
Mm-hmm.
We get knocked back, but it's much louder and much closer. And so Billy's kind of joking about it. He's a big boy. He's not a big old corn-fed boy. Great, great guy. He's like, hey, it's getting late. Maybe we should, be heading back towards the truck. And, all right, man, so we started getting our packs on, and we just had a nice lunch. And we were done. We're like, okay, we can't find another way. And I did it again, and this time we got clacked back really quickly, immediately. And now everybody's getting their backpacks on. We're like, okay, it's probably really time to go now. And we're joking about it. None of us are scared, but the hair on your neck is raised, man. You know you're 7 miles from your vehicle. And I grabbed some rocks. So I went to do it one more time. And I'm like, yeah, we gotta go, And I was feeling the same way, but I was intrigued, man. So I clacked some rocks together and immediately got clacked back with rocks.
Oh, boy.
So then a rock comes in. We're standing there just kind of looking around because there's a ridge all the way around us. We're in a little ravine. Not ravine, it's actually kind of a nice open spot along the north fork of Cedar Creek. And where it branches off. I'd have to show you on a map, but you can actually find it.
Okay.
That's near Whiskey Stump Camp, just above Ladybug Trail, all cute names, and South Fork of the Kauai River.
Okay.
So I did it one more time, and another rock, we see this rock come in, and we're like, oh no, that didn't effing happen. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're just walking. Everybody's all silent. But we're looking around on this ridge trying to see where that rock came from. And I just did a whoop back. And this big rock, probably about, 3/4 the size of a bowling ball, comes in from what looks like 300 to 400 feet away on top of a ridge just east of us. And it's like, thud, landed right exactly in between us.
Oh, gosh.
Now, I'm not sure how fast this person up there built a trebuchet or some sort of catapult, but I asked Billy to pick that thing up and throw it. Now, he was a wrestler in high school, and like I said, a really big man and not a bit of fat on him.
Mm-hmm.
Strong man. I just pick that thing up and see how far he can throw it. He couldn't throw it 25 feet.
Oh.
We saw it come in from 300 or 400 feet away. So we were shadow going out. Something was deliberately breaking branches above us all the way out. So we didn't take any breaks. We just kind of kept moving, mostly downhill anyway. Got back to the truck about dusk. Everything stopped. Everything was cool. Got in our cars and left. We got in our truck and left.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was about it. And then we didn't have any more. We didn't actually go back up into that region for a while, but we did notice we didn't go back for a follow-up trip, I think, for 3 more years, I believe. It was in 2010 when we finally built up enough crews to go back and do the trip a few more times.
Mm-hmm.
We had yellings, clacking, and by then there was always somebody from the Bigfoot community that was coming with us. They would work the creeks and do other things and look for samples, and some of them got some prints and cast some prints. One of them was given to me. It was 18 inches long, and can't remember the exact dimensions. I have it. And then this Finding Bigfoot show pops up. And in our area, we have a place called Shaver Lake. It's up in the mountains, and they did a little town halls they used to do at the beginning of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Those that go to a town hall, they'd ask people around what their experiences were, and then generally pick one story. we kind of work that story a little bit for the few hours they're there. Anyway, we told our story. They were blown away by it because we had our whole caving team there. And then, so we met some of the crew there, are still our good friends, still, in fact, some of them caving with us. We made some great friends that night. It was really fun.
Yeah.
And then we did a little interview out front because they weren't allowed to have the channel 26. It's our hometown channel. We're doing interviews with people outside of the town hall because they were allowed to talk to them. They just couldn't film anything that was going to be on the show because of copyright issues.
Mm-hmm.
The show hadn't aired yet, so they don't want anything getting out of us shows. Natural enough, makes sense. I did an interview, and it got out, and it came up on the television there in our region, and I'm extremely well known in the area. So everywhere I went after that, I go to the local store or the feed stores from the mountain community. People like tossing rocks at me. It was really cool. It was all fun. And again, I was a really well respected, still are, or a well-respected person from that area.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, as a result of that, people started coming to. But now, I didn't want to tell anybody this, but you're willing to talk about it. You went on air and talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
I had this experience here. Well, we had this experience while we were out hunting in the backcountry here. One time we were out camping and this happened. And there was some great reports, and I'm just absorbing them. I didn't know what to do, so I kind of just started keeping records of all of it. And then one day, probably about a year after that, we had a local taco truck up in our area, and there was a crew, most of them from the East Coast, and I can't give their names because they asked me not to. I can talk about what we did. And they were asking some people at that taco truck in the store right there, which is our local Indian trading post.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually what it's called, Squaw Valley Indian Trading Post. And we're mountain people, you know what I mean? You can ride in our horseback and go get a beer, not a worry. So they're asking people, do you know anybody here that knows anything about the caves or mines in the area? And 5-10 people spout, oh, you got to meet Kenny. You got to talk to Ken Gentry. He runs Mother Earth Underground. It's the only caving team that anybody up here has ever even heard of, and they're really well known. Yeah. And he's the expert for all the caves in the region. And I don't know about that, but I sure was familiar with all of them. So they got a hold of me, and they wanted to talk to me about doing some guide work for them. They were looking for a bat. Like, okay, sure. And they paid me to go out at night, which I thought was really odd at first. We also did some daytime trips. But when we went out on a couple trips, and there was many of them, still work with these folks, fine folks, very well respected, very well educated. We came out within I think it might even been the first night. We're trying to prove the existence of a pterodactyl.
Uh-huh.
We've had reports in our region here, and we've had reports, all up and down the West Coast, right all the way up through to British Columbia and some as far south as Mexico City, which I thought was really interesting because that's the exact region of a bat that is almost unheard of anywhere. Some people know what it is. It's called a pallid bat, Pallid. And I'd already worked with another bat conservatorship to try to locate how they hang. They hang either, are they large groups, are they more singular? It turns out they're very singular, very hard to find, but they're almost 2 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
They're as big as a flying fox.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And I had seen some, and I knew about them. But I'd only seen a few because of these actual bat researchers I did some guide work for. But these guys are telling me some really interesting stories, and I can't share exactly what they told me or exactly the places they were looked or exactly the methods they used.
Okay.
Most of which are common that you would already be aware of.
Okay.
Okay, most of them are just commonplace things that any legitimate researcher is going to use. They did have funding. They had some of the greatest tools and packs I've ever seen, and they were just really, really cool people. And I still have much respect for them and still do some work for them up here in our region. But there were I started looking into it, and besides the fact that one of our friends, one of our dearest friends, when he found out I was working with these guys, came forward and says, "Anybody tell you about the pterodactyls that we saw?" And he's a cool kid. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And this is all in the same week. Suddenly people were talking about pterodactyls. Oh yeah, we didn't have much money. We were gathering wood off the side of the roads from broken limbs that were falling from the oaks to get a fire going in this mobile they just moved into. It was him and his young wife before the children came along, and it was right at dusk, and this, for lack of a better word, pterodactyl, between 10 and 15 feet wide. They were so freaked out when it happened so quick, it came out of a large tree right above them where they pulled over to gather up limbs and branches.
It came out of the large tree?
Came out of the large, it had been roosted in this tree, and it was a very large oak, very wide branches. No branches close together. There would have been room up there to put a huge tree house, and it had plenty of room to be able to launch its wings. So he took me back to the same exact spot, which was, let's just say it was right on Ruth Hill Road. And we'll leave it at that. But he took me to the spot, and there are some caves in that area. There's also some cave art in that area that either the Monos or early Yocut Indians, which we were very good friends with, still are, in that area, had already shown us and told us about. And we definitely don't see where those are because people are terrible. They go up and they paint and they destroy.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So but I was granted the permission through respect and had earned it. But there's pterodactyls, Bigfoots, all these things depicted on these rocks.
Oh, wow.
So I know that you're interested in the subject of pterodactyls or modern day dinosaurs, or you're not trying to prove they existed. We know they existed. You're trying to prove that. You're trying to see if there's any truth to some of the sightings, like many are. And there's sightings all over the world. They have been throughout man's existence on this earth.
Right.
And from cave art going back 25,000 years or further, some of them are hard to even date. The painted caves in France. There's caves in our regions that depict these. The Bigfoot caves in Tulare, which is at the Thule Indian Reservation, those are famous now. We were able to go see them before. When the Finding Bigfoot thing came out, they kind of started opening up more and allowing people to go see these. And in fact, in the early days, we were not allowed to have a camera, but we could go in and we could sketch them.
Sure.
And we had to be with a tribal elder. You had to remove your shoes. Those things you had to do. And we talked to them about. I went back and I talked to them about Bigfoot. And they got some great stories there. One about a battle with humans, the Chumash who were living in the Yosemite Valley. And back when it was a beautiful, pristine valley before it was dammed up, it was Hetch Hetchy. And which I know there's many stories of out there. Broke John Deere's heart and all that when that happened. But they tell all these stories, and they date back hundreds, if not thousands of years of their interactions with these different species that, apparently don't exist. So then we start hearing, I'm really tight with the rangers back home. Half of my friends are rangers, or they work for the Forest Service in one capacity or other, whether they were tending to the camps, or they're marking trees for, back when they used to forest the Sierra a little bit. They used to property manage their forest. And they did a lot of the tree plantings, things of that nature.
Sure.
The National Forest Service is national and there's a state. But they got reports all the time from these things. They had a large visitor center right there in Dunlap, California, which is right at Squaw Valley. It's all the same area to us. And they started pulling off these reports. They couldn't even report them, and they were asked not to take the reports anymore by a gentleman I know that I really disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
Foundationally, as a human being, I disagree with him on many levels. But they stopped taking reports. They would write something down as a tourist, was usually a tourist, was there. And then they either discard it or they'd hand it to a friend of mine. This friend of mine would save them for me. He was Indian. He was with the National Park Service, or I'm sorry, the National Forest Service there. And he'd call me up every now and then with another handful of them. Hey, got another handful for you. And some of them were real regulars. The old gray Bigfoot that was up near Horseshoe Meadows. There were some regulars that were just reappearing. We're getting these, this people from France saw the same thing that these people from Bakersfield saw a year ago in the same exact spot. And we're starting to draw these connections. And then, of course, the pterodactyl stuff was coming out. Some rangers in northern Washington had seen two of them on the side of a creek walking, similar to how they showed it in one of the Jurassic Parks. One was coming across a bridge, where it was kind of elbow walking with its legs and its wings on the ground. I might not, you wouldn't call it an elbow. I don't know what to call it. I'm a caver. But it was doing this kind of elbow walking, or getting a drink out of the creek or something. It was two rangers, I believe, saw these two together and didn't have a camera or anything, but they saw it and they made a report on it, and that report got back to me. Then we had some really odd stuff start to happen. One of them was through an old mailman of ours. He was Hispanic, great guy, and he had seen the Channel 26 interview, but was kind enough not to throw rocks at me. And he was my mailman on my route in our area.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks to me one day. He was like, Kenny, I don't know if it was a cousin, just an uncle, something. He wants to talk to you, and he wants to talk to you about some reports. And he can't tell anybody. I go, why can't he tell somebody else? He was well, he's a leader of a local cartel that's growing drugs up in the mountains. This is before pot was legalized in California.
Oh.
And we ran into their camps many times on caving trips.
Okay.
You give them a wide berth, just keep moving with your head down. We didn't, that was none of our business. It was not what we were there for. We just kept moving. Okay. Anyway, so he goes, look, man, the guy's cool. He's not, he's not going to hurt you or nothing, but he's cartel.
Mm-hmm.
And he's definitely cartel. But he wants to meet with you. He wants to tell you about some of these things. Because he just wants to talk about with somebody that might have some intelligent response to him.
Somebody's willing to listen.
What's that?
Someone who's willing to listen.
Somebody's willing to listen. It's just, set it up, man. Set it up. So I met him at a local restaurant there. And it was actually at Klingons. And I went over to have coffee with him. A young, polite, clean-cut, very clean English-speaking gentleman. He was actually in medical school. Okay. But I also understood that he would be quick to take your head off and remove it slowly if you ever crossed him. I thought being in medical school, he'd probably know how to do that faster than most people would anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But he was actually in medical school. So the guy was, I don't know how to say this. He was cool. I didn't feel, I was comfortable to sit down and talk with him. So we were just going to talk for a few minutes. An hour and a half later, we parted ways. Okay. So he starts talking about the regions that they can no longer grow in that don't have anything to do with sheriffs or the DEA or the Park Service. Usually when their lines get found, their water lines out of the springs, or their crops get found, well, they can no longer grow there because, it's clear that somebody's going to come back to that spot the following year and take those crops back out again. Right? So they'd lose areas they could grow in because they'd gotten caught in those areas, or the crops were destroyed in those areas, so they always had to find new areas. And then there's areas that they regularly grow in that have never been discovered. And then there's the areas that can no longer grow in because they had a visitor. And so he starts to tell me these stories, and I understood immediately why they couldn't tell anybody. One, they're growing weed up in the middle of the park, in the middle of nowhere. Two, they were poaching deer and stuff for food, because they would take the south of our border buddies, and they would embed them there to monitor and watch the watering systems and everything. And so there was always people left behind. They would find their camps a lot. Okay. In fact, some of them were actually much cleaner than a lot of regular campers leave their campsites. That's a whole different discussion. So there was this one group of people, and they were at a place called Key Kettle Experimental Range, just above Patterson Bluff, Rogers Ridge. This is in Fresno County, and it's along the North Fork of the Kings River. Key Kettle is an experimental area that's been shut down for years, so that the university or somebody can go in once in a while and measure the growth and the rebirth of the area, of trees and wildlife and stuff. But again, a lot of us disagree with the reasoning it was shut off. But anyway, you can't get into this region, and I want to say it's probably more than 6,000 or 7,000 acres, probably bigger. I'd have to look at a map. Okay. But it begins what we call the triangle. There's a triangle of truth up there. And in this corner, there's, it's a locked off area. So technically, you're not even allowed to hunt it. People do, but rarely. It's too hard to get your vehicle in to try to get something out that you may have hunted a larger deer slay. It's too hard to remove it, so a lot of people just avoid the areas. Hikers will go through it occasionally, but they were always able to get away with the grow there. Now, he only mentioned that area and 4 or 5 more because they couldn't grow there anymore because of an incident. So we have these 2 guys there. They were in the process of poaching a deer. So they did. They poached this deer, drug it down to their camp, and had it up in a tree. We're just starting to bleed it out. And something up on the ridge above them just starts screaming. They didn't know what it was. And it's raging down this hill straight towards their camp. And at first they thought, I don't know, there are grizzlies up here? What the heck is it? They always had loose cattle that had foraged in the summertime that were released to go up and, do the range thing gathered up at the end of the year. So they're always running into cattle and stuff, but this is just raging coverage. Turns out what they claim was about an 8-foot Bigfoot. And it came in screaming at them. These guys they're almost peeing on themselves. They're scared to death. It's right in front of them. They said it was screaming so loud and fierce, it was hurting their ears. And they just sat and cowered. And they were frozen. They could not move. And it grabbed the deer, ripped it off its rope, threw it over his shoulder, turned around and screamed at him again, and shot straight up the mountain at the same speed it came down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they couldn't move for hours, is how it was explained to this gentleman, their boss. And he believed him. So they weren't killed for abandoning the crop. It's a dangerous business. Anyhow, they believed him, but they wanted no part of going back. He understood. He actually never sent them back. He sent other crews in to the same area, and they had incidences. They had incidences where, in the middle of a grow, all their plants would be busted 5-6 feet up and all pointed in the same direction. I'm like, no kidding. So we just had that happen with us on this search. And if all this stuff's clicking, it's like, I believe them. Yeah. I absolutely believe them. And you always meet the types, and I don't mean any disrespect by this at all, but some of the types that we have out there that are interested in the subjects, they can't go to Scotland and go look for Nessie
Yeah.
Skies are cloudy, so they can't go out and look for UFOs, so they go look for Bigfoot that weekend. You know those guys and gals?
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, there's some sweet ones there. There's some really cool. There's some flat out crazy. You know, there are.
I bet a few.
If I see another fuzzy picture of a fuzzy forest with a fuzzy Bigfoot, you know, anyhow, out of sight, they start telling me some more stories. Another one was above Black Rock Reservoir, which is on the opposite side of the river from there. It's actually called Rancheria Creek, and there's some large caves up in there.
Okay.
And they had seen a pterodactyl in that same region. This is, again, North Fork of the Kings River, just east of Black Rock Reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, up on a place called Rancheria Creek. It's the plateau of that thing. If you walk out over the edge of the plateau, you have to hike out. If you get down to the edge, if you look down, you can see 1,800 feet below, you can see the reservoir, Black Rock Reservoir. And I know that area extremely well because we caved that whole region. There's hundreds of caves in that region nobody knows about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another area that's kind of closed up for hunting, but it is and it isn't. It's kind of funny in there. But there's some dead-end roads coming out of the old Fox mines, coming back down to the main trench of the Upper Kings, they call it, the Kings River, which is above Pine Flat Reservoir. I know the area really, really well. And he's talking about these situations that they had there, same thing. And again, he couldn't tell, that's actually Rogers Ridge, not Patterson. And it's a big bluff that you can see for miles. In fact, on a clear day, you can see him from Fresno. Okay. Which is 70 miles away. So, same exact thing, except that they weren't attacked, but they were coming through and snapping and they weren't taking anything. They were all just snapped in half, these plants. And so they would have to abandon that grow 3/4 into a grow. And they couldn't come up with an explanation. There was some footprints in the area from where, they always had blowouts on their water lines. And they were seeing large footprints, and they described Bigfoot 18 inches long. They described it perfectly.
Yeah.
Then he goes off on something I was not expecting whatsoever. In the non-grow season, okay, or if they're so embedded in everything, the Serranos especially, these cartel, that they also run picking groups. There's groups who go out and pick peaches, pick oranges, pick this, pick that. They also work some of the Spanish rodeos in the region. So they're embedded in a lot of, in the entire way of the Hispanic and Latino way of life in our area. It doesn't mean they represent them. Some great people out there. But they are embedded in picking, agriculture, everything, right? So he's telling me about this. And they were working the Wood Lake, California, which is just east of Visalia, California, again near Three Rivers, which I found really interesting. They're working this rodeo. 3-day rodeo starts on Friday, ends on Sunday, about midday. And they do the normal rodeo stuff. And they're cleaning up all the grounds, they're cleaning up everything. He had, I think, 30 people out there, some other groups and other agricultural contractors and other groups out there. They're cleaning up, breaking down the fair situation, kind of. And it was right at dusk, and they were all having some beers, and somebody was cooking up a big batch of food for them all, and they were just about done for the day, for the weekend, so they're having kind of a party there. And they said it was 20 feet wide. But every one of them that was there, and it was almost 100 people, saw a pterodactyl come right down directly over the rodeo grounds in Wood Lake. So did the citizens of Wood Lake. A bunch of them saw it. It was right just before dusk. You could clearly see it.
Wow.
And then it came back over them again. So they're all blown away talking about this at 90 miles an hour, what they just saw. And it came back through like, I just wanted to show off to you here again. And they said had to have been 20 feet wide.
Wow, that's a very big.
And because he just came out with that out of the blue, after kind of briefly mentioning a pterodactyl-like thing up at, not Tea Kettle, but above Black Rock, which is in a trough very similar to Black Rock. That trough goes up into the hills, that rain shed, and becomes the three rivers of the Sequoia River coming out of Sequoia, Keats Canyon, actually Sequoia National Park in that area. Blown away. I was just blown away by this. So, years later, many interviews later, I'm chatting with you. And here we are. I mean, everything has been going in these directions, including more caves have been reported to me with cave art, that some of them I can tell you where they are, some of them I cannot. And not because I'm being mean about it or anything, but we don't give cave locations for two very important reasons. One, if you're an inexperienced caver, you know what you're doing, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get lost, or you're going to die. And the other reason, that's the number one other reason, is that is the amount of vandalism in the caves is incredible. People go in, they bust off stalactites, stalagmites, they gather up cave pearls, they bust open shields and bacon rinds and all the beautiful decorations that you imagine when you see a solution cave in photographs. Yeah. They bust those things up and graffiti them. That happened at Clo Cave at South Fork Campground. So because of that, we don't really give cave locations out, and that's important. The reason for it.
And I think that's understandable. That makes sense to me. We want to try to protect what's left and what's there.
Well, they're very, very good at keeping historical secrets. Caves are a wonderful thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I'm biased.
Sure.
Now, I'm just sitting here yakking on and on. Do you have any questions?
Oh, I've got a few of them for you.
Okay.
Yeah,
what do you got out there?
The pterosaur is something I chose to research on because you can go to every state in the United States and there's going to be someone who comes forward saying, I've seen a pterosaur. Now, technically...
Agreed.
Yeah, and technically they're not dinosaurs, but it's a good way of communicating, as a good friend Garth Guessman has always said. It's a good way to communicate what they are to get the ball rolling.
How close are you with Garth?
I've known him for a little bit now, not a long time. I've seeked him out ever since I saw him.
Fantastic individual.
Yeah, he is. And when I got into this field of research, I started contacting people because I wanted... To me, these people were very important to me. I want to say, in a way, you look at them like football players, where you're like, oh gosh, can I get your autograph? They've been there, and now
we are that weird, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we are, and I'm hoping. I think for the most part,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. To me, it's if it was me in that field for so long and someone came along who was young and said, hey, I want to do this too, can you give me some pointers? Absolutely, because we need more people in this field to research these creatures. And I think there's a lot of it here.
I've been on active searches with Garth. I don't know if you've ever met him personally. Mm-hmm. He is even more wonderful in person than he is, and he's very polite and very giving. I've been on several searches with him many, many years ago, and we still chat all the time about the subject.
That's great. That's the way of keeping up the friendship there. Yeah, there's a lot of people I'm still reaching out to, like Paul Nation and Jonathan Whitcomb. I've had a chance to chat with him here and there, but I think I'm hoping still he'll reach out to me, and so we can get him on this network so he can tell his stories because they're very important. But
those guys have some fantastic stories.
Yeah, I need to get
already weeded through what most people would consider the BS of the stuff. Yeah, and it's very hard to weed through some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And some of the reports, and was this guy just drinking, or is this guy or gal just making it up to get 5 minutes of fame? Sure. Or did this really happen?
It's a phenomenon that's definitely happening around the world, not just in Papua New Guinea, but here in the States. And more people are. Yeah, more people are coming forward, and I've had the pleasure interviewing them and doing reenactments of their stories is what I'm working on right now for an Arkansas case. And
outstanding.
Yeah, it's going really well. I'll tell you one thing. animation and CGI is very difficult to work with right now. It's costly, but I'm glad I'm doing it because
Are you
someone
talking about the Corona event making things more complicated?
a little bit. It's more like just
Was it already complicated before Corona and that didn't help?
it was a little bit more complicated before.
Okay, gotcha. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's something I've been dying to ask you about, and I've heard you tell this before, and I think it's very important that my audience hear this because when I first heard you back in August 2019, you were talking to Jeffrey Gonzalez. You
Oh yeah, he even donated money and came up and donated money towards our mobile command post. He donated a big chunk of money for that. Oh yeah, we've been working with him for years. He's in Sanger, which is right at the bottom of the hill where we go shopping for our groceries in the mountains there. We've been long friends for a long time.
Well, that's great.
And all of his staff and their friends are my friends, and yeah, we come from the same exact county and have the same exact interests. I have a lot of respect for them.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people you will meet in this field and then establish great connections with. So that's important, and that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with them 100%, especially on some of the political stuff. It's like, oh, Jeffrey,
Sure.
come on. You know, I really try to get hits on the show, but I love him. He's a great guy, and his experiences, because I've been up in the mountains with him camping, are real.
Yeah.
I believe in 100% of what happened with him and the fingerprints on the window of his truck.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that too.
I couldn't see it. I was at that camp.
Mm-hmm.
We can't really disclose where it was. They're the kind of guys guys and gals, that don't want that disclosed at all.
I understand.
And again, with me, unless you ask me not to disclose something, and I'll ask you to before I repeat it to anybody. But when it comes to our crew, we're a caving crew. We are the only private caving organization in the United States. We have 5 chapters, one in the Ukraine and one in West Germany. We're very well respected.
Mm-hmm.
But I will share these stories 100% and nail down the exact location unless it happens to be at a cave entrance.
Okay.
That's the only time I can't tell you the exact location, time, and date of when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I'm going to give it to you.
Good. I like that.
I want you to go back up there and see how hard it was for us to get there. 2, you might get lucky because we know that these things repeat the same area, especially through the passes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway, that's just me.
Yeah, and one of the things you discussed, which I went digging for relentlessly and had a hard time locating, you mentioned something that everybody needs to hear this. This is very important. There was a situation back in the 1800s, I think, where the Sequoia colonists, I want to say, may have been involved with pterosaurs. Do you remember that?
Are you talking about the Fresno County hunts?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, they had organized these hunts to go up and hunt these, I can't remember what they call them now, gorilla dragons?
Mm-hmm.
Pterodactyls were known to be in existence even in the 1890s.
Right.
They'd already been discovered in fossilized form. Not many, because they're very fragile when it comes to the fossil records. They're very fragile.
They are, yeah.
Species. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm preaching to the choir with you on that. But I'm not so sure that was all based in hype like the Tombstone ones. Okay. Around the same time. I believe Tombstone was a year or 2 later. 1891 was the Fresno. They were offering hunts. You come pay a fee, they take you on a hunt to find these pterodactyls, which I thought was really interesting because those hunts were in the Fresno County foothills. One of the things that's very common knowledge that I can talk about is it's common throughout the group of influence here, we'll call it, is that they are not high elevation creatures. They do frequent the valleys, but in the foothills between the San Joaquin Valley and the mountains, I'm going to say somewhere between 500 feet elevation up to about 3,000. That's where all of our sightings and reports are.
Gotcha.
And they live in these regions and those similar elevations throughout the areas of where they're at. So there's some common denominators you can put into place to kind of narrow your searches.
Yeah.
But that's common, is that. And so the 1891 in Fresno was interesting. There was also a police officer that took a picture of one during a Beacon storage building. It was an abandoned building in southeast Fresno. It was burning down. It had gotten on fire with some kids. Some kids went in and broke in where it caught fire. Building was on fire. They were there with the big ladder trucks and just trying to put the building out. A non-occupied building had been unoccupied for, at that time, I believe, 30, 40 years. It was just one of these old relics in southeast downtown Fresno. And it came flying out of some busted big windowed area in broad daylight with over 100 people there saw it. Phone calls came in for hours because it flew back over again, and people even got pictures of it. I did get to see a picture. I'm not allowed to do anything with that picture.
Mm-hmm.
I have it, but I'm not allowed to do anything with it. It's not that clear. Okay, it's not a fuzzy Bigfoot. You can make out the elongated head, definite shape of the wings. And it was taken frantically and quickly with a cell phone in the early days of cell phone cameras.
Okay.
But it's over a used car parking lot in that same region, a kind of a poor area of downtown Fresno.
Okay.
And so you tie that in with the one from 1891. All the other sightings in the Fresno County area, Avocado Lake, the ones going up northern towards Shaver Lake, but in the lower foothills, not as high as Shaver. Shaver is about 6,500 feet.
Yeah.
But lower on those routes up to those mountains off of Highway 168, there's been sightings right off of that, what they call in Fresno, they call it 4-lane. It's all 4 lanes in there now, but back in the day it was the first 4-lane we actually had going up into the hills when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because it also went to China Peak, which is one of our ski areas. So it was a pretty big tourism area. Lots of sightings in those areas. And then you come to the stories like Tombstone. You read that one, haven't you?
I have heard.
Pretty much proven false. Tombstone was another dying town at the time. And I think they were just trying to drum up some tourism or some business in any way they could.
Yeah.
Caught a hold of the Fresno story and repeated it.
Oh, that's too bad.
And there was a lot of things, even in the paper reports, the Tombstone, whatever that Tombstone rag was at the time, that contradicted itself, even in its own story.
Uh-huh. Mm.
But yeah, so again, Fresno County, now having been raised there and know the whole region and surveyed there most of my life,
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps I hold a special interest there, and so I tend to focus on more in our area, just because I know the region better.
Yeah.
You're taking on reports from everywhere, all over the world. I am not a researcher.
Mm-hmm.
Never claimed to be in any way. Highly interested. I mean, to be perfectly honest, the very first movie I ever saw with my brother and his girlfriend was in Fresno. I'm probably my very first walk-in movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was, again, 1972. I was 10 years old. We went to go see a double feature, and it was The Legend of Boggy Creek and, the Hindenburg.
Mm-hmm.
And that Legend of Boggy Creek never got out of my mind. So I always grew up thinking that there was an easy possibility for some of these cryptological species to absolutely exist. We prove it every year.
Yeah.
We find new species in caves that were never known.
Right.
I have seen pools with sulfuric acid so strong, made from the sulfamides permeated through the soil, mixed with the exact amount of water, and it's a sulfuric acid that is, I'm not going to say pure, but it's strong enough that you put your fingers in there, it's going to burn a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got shrimp and fish and blind crawdads living in it. Explain it. I've seen some of the most amazing things. Sorry to revert back to caves, but I'm a caver, so I've seen some things that are just absolutely mind-blowing below ground and above ground.
Yeah.
And I've had a very good life, a very long life of exploring. So one of the things I've proven beyond the shadow of a doubt is you can't see anything from your couch.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely,
my
we got to
emphasis
get
has
out there.
always been, get out, get some friends together, go out, go camping, just go out and enjoy, get out. You're going to see things that you never would have seen.
Yeah.
When you listen to that interview with Jeffrey, did I go into the Siku or Siki Miki aspect and the hidden stuff from the Park Service?
I think you did. But I think the one that, but the one that was really stood out to me involving the pterosaurs was, I think you mentioned that there was a rumor that people were bringing them in from somewhere, that they were like cattle in an attempt to thin out the numbers of something. I could be wrong.
Oh, that's funny. I do remember that. Yeah, I don't remember how much I spoke about it. I'm not a witness to it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's pretty well known that somebody out there was, or had made it believable enough to some legitimate people that would normally never swallow a story like that it was actually happening. They were being brought in to hunt species. It did have something to do with cattle related.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was taking out predators or what it was. These things don't go after cows, but they will go after something smaller or something else that might be competing for that foraging land.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cattlemen that were bringing them in.
Yeah.
And I know a guy
Uh-huh.
who owns 50,000 acres in our region.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, he doesn't own it. His ranch is about 5,000 acres, but he leases much more for his cattle to go out and open feed during the summer months. And, they gather them up in the end of the year, take them to feedlots, finish them out, and that's where they, become your steaks from there. But they work those areas, and they have some of the best stories. And I've had people come forward to me with these stories because they knew me, and they never would have told anybody, ever. And one of them was that the cattlemen, and I don't believe it was modern times. I believe it was early days of California's history.
Okay.
Or perhaps throughout. So yeah, how much of it I believe, it's hard to say. But when it comes from the people that I talk to, are some of the most well-respected, multi-generation ranching families that pull me aside and say, "Kim, we got to talk."
Yeah.
I believe them.
Mm-hmm.
I believe them just because of my father knew these people very well. They were the highest integrity, really decent people who don't believe in these things for the most part unless they see them.
Respected credibility.
What was that one?
Yeah.
Now, why? Because when you hear these things, you're like, okay, well, that's a great story, man. But why would they bring them in?
Right.
Now, it was explained to me something to do with predators or competition for forage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which one it was at this point. I really don't.
Yeah, and that one was very intriguing to me. The competition. It's like, really?
Yeah, so, and if it's true, where are they getting them from?
Yeah, that is the huge question. Where were they coming from? Were they raising them?
What we heard is that they were coming from places like Madagascar and Papua New Guinea.
Oh my goodness.
And again, these are people that never watched, the Monster Quest, and when they're in Papua New Guinea looking for a brontosaurus or the proof of a pterodactyl, or, pterosaur.
Yeah.
This is proper terminology again. I'm a caver. I can tell you more about caves than you ever care to know.
It's just like, Ken, they don't know. They name these things based on, through their history. Okay, they don't know the name pterosaur. That's a Western word. Okay. They know Ropen or Inda because those are the names they gave them. And when you describe
of course.
and you say, did it have feathers? No, it didn't have feathers.
Like the 100 different names for Bigfoot that they have throughout our native cultures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Long before a white man ever set foot on this soil.
Yeah, yeah.
My gosh,
they have the same thing when it comes to, well, things that you would consider completely extinct.
Yeah.
That they say are not.
Mm-hmm. There's more to it.
So there you are. Well, and these flying pterosaurs are commonly seen throughout what we call the Orange Belt. Are you familiar with that is in agriculture in the San Joaquin Valley?
A little bit, not a lot.
Okay, what it is, it's an area nestled to the foothills at the edges of the large valley, the large San Joaquin Valley. And they're on both sides, but mostly on the east side of the valley, which would be the west side of the Sierra Nevada range.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There's a pocket, an elevation, and you're going to find towns like Orange Cove, Lemon Cove, where it's called the Citrus Belt or the Band. And in those areas are the areas of what they call the pterosaur flyovers.
Mm-hmm.
They come out of the foothills, and that's the first thing they meet agriculturally, and they could be after. I couldn't tell you what they're after. I mean, I don't know what it is they hunt for. It seems to me there's a mix of aquatic. There's a mix of, and again, they could be opportunists. I know the predators that they could forage to, and that they could be eating carrion.
Yeah.
You know, even bald eagles that are primarily fish hunters, they also eat carrion.
Mm-hmm.
They eat when they're hungry, whatever they can get sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your thought. What is your thoughts on what they consume?
I think it's for me. What I've been finding out is that it's a variety. I know that when I went out to Washington State, there's rumors of pterosaurs out there, not large ones. Some can be like the wingspan, like an eagle, because eagles have like a wingspan of 5'9" to 7'5", fairly large. Well, there's been rumors of some sort of Rhamphorhynchus or a Rhamphorhynchoid that has been out there. This is central Washington State, always in the central areas, like the Yakima Forest and the Yakima River. So the people out there who I've talked to who they really don't want to come forward like everybody else. They like to be left in privacy. They want their privacy. But they have been saying
understandable.
And they've been saying that they've been feeding on the variations of fish out there, because there's lots of them out there in those rivers.
Sure.
So, and I do think that it's more than just the fish, though. It is whatever, in a way, the pterosaur is a scavenger. So it will take what it can get. And I also don't think that it needs a lot to sustain itself, to where it actually spreads it out like a crocodile or an alligator. So
sure, I believe that as well, which has allowed it to survive all this time.
Yeah, and let me give you a quick example of this. I mean, when it comes to adapting, it used to be in the past that these certain kinds of birds, not pterosaurs, they would feed on frogs, but these frogs were poisonous, so they were killing the birds. So over time, the bird became smart, and it would flip the frog over and eat from its belly, because it knew that's not where the poison was. Okay? So the pterosaurs, if, to sustain a colony, which I do believe that is out there, they are learning to adapt. Okay? And in some ways, like my friend Jason McLean once said, he said that they are, in a sense, evolving, but mostly adapting. Okay, so they're adapting to what they know they can do. They're not non-intelligent. They are very intelligent. They know how to stay hidden, but every once in a while, they are seen.
Sure.
And there's so much more to it that we are overlooking and that paleontologists are overlooking. The possibilities of these thunderstorms that the Native Americans are talking about, that they are using the currents to ride on, to be able to get around. There's something about the thunderstorms, the moisture in the air, things like that. It's extremely fascinating. And this is why I haven't stopped. I just keep going because I love learning about these creatures. Unlike the other ones where
I know very little.
Yeah, you go to like a lake. You go to investigate Nessie. Well, you're just going to a lake. Well, the pterosaur phenomenon, you can go to any state. And again, you have a great chance of meeting somebody who has had an encounter. So it's pretty special.
That's an absolute fact, and I ran into it as soon as I moved up here. It was kind of odd, too, because I've done a lot of radio and television stuff solely on caving. It's completely just about caving.
Mm-hmm.
So I get recognize I have no idea why. I truly have no. I was working up in on the Columbia River on a big construction site, and there was an inspector there to inspect some giant bolts that we were setting for a huge nitrogen tank. And the bolt holes had to pass an inspection. The bolt had to pass an inspection. Things of that nature. It was, it's a very dangerous situation. Everything about it is, the guy's flown in from somewhere. I believe he's flown in from northern Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And he recognizes Ken Gentry, Mother Earth Underground. Well, yes, I am. I don't know that I'm sorry. Who are you? And he goes, oh, I'm just, and he turns out he's our inspector.
Mm-hmm.
So we got done with the project. When we get done here, can we chat for a minute? So sure. Now he's a fisherman that goes after, and he has him and his wife and a friend of him form a crew. They take people out sturgeon fishing on the Columbia River.
Mm-hmm.
And they fish for sturgeon. They've gotten some big ones. I mean, some of the biggest that have ever been caught. They're always released quickly. It's part of the gig. You cannot do what he's doing unless you're proving that you're not causing any harm. You know how bad the sturgeon, or how closely the sturgeon is protected. Very few times every 10 years are you allowed to keep a few of them. They're always just, between 45, 3/4 inch, and 52, and an 1/8 inch. It's really odd,
Mm-hmm.
But he goes, I know that you're Bigfoot friendly. I've been to your website. I've followed you over the years on Facebook, and I got to tell you about this. We saw what looked like a pterodactyl coming right down the Columbia River at dusk one night with a paid guest on our boat.
Mm-hmm.
It came down like you would see a pelican flying low to the water, and it just flew. It got kind of close to him within about maybe, he said, less than a quarter mile. It had to be huge. Yep. It was a long ways off, and then it just turned, and its wing was dipping into the water as it turned, and then just flew off into the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were looking back towards the ocean. And he didn't tell me where exactly it was, and I don't think I even thought to ask him. I just thought it was pretty amazing. And that was shortly after 2012, he's telling me this story. I'm like, wow, how does this whole culture, how do all these people seeing these things?
And not say something.
I just heard about them in my early 40s.
Yeah.
Being, from these regions. And then you start hearing about more.
Mm-hmm.
And so occasionally, I'll check my Google alerts or something like that, and there's more and more sightings all the time, all over the world.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
But one thing that's always involved, it seems like, again, back to your common denominators, is water.
Yep.
So we all need water to supply. That's pretty clear. So you're not seeing these in the high deserts unless they're near rivers, mm-hmm. or other. And again, even a bald eagle will have, or an eagle of any type, will have a 200-mile range that they can hunt in a day, 200 square miles.
Yeah.
Not uncommon. They generally stay within 50 square miles, and much less than that when they have young. But so what kind of a range does this animal have?
Yeah, it has a very vast range, I believe.
Then you look at another factor. We had more people in the mountains, whether it be the Cascades, the Siskiyous, the Great Sierra Nevadas. We had more people in those hills in the between 1849 through probably around the 1930s, mm-hmm. than we have now at all. They're like, oh no, there's way more people. No, there's not. Like many of these regions and parks are closed off in the winter completely.
Yeah.
You can't even get up the highways and get anywhere near some of the state parks and state forests, and the gates are shut. So you have an entire empty forest, not always covered in snow, right. But for well, about 6 months of the year,
Mm-hmm.
in the higher elevations, more, completely shut up. And you've got Evolution Valley, where there's just all kinds of crazy stories about that, but nothing pterosaur related. That's all big, hairy stuff.
Yeah. Now, when you mentioned the Columbia River Gorge, I mean, that being close to me, I missed a sighting that was in September of 2019. A couple was driving, and they saw it up in the sky, and they said it was a pterosaur, and it could have been the one they saw, the other people saw on the boat when they were on the river. They're coming through, but they're
this was in 2012, fall of 2012 when I met him, and it had just happened prior to that.
Okay. Yeah, they're still around, and they're coming down from. They'll come into the Columbia River Gorge, and you'll also see them in Washington State, which is an expedition I'm looking to take here in July. And I love the fact that equipment is getting better these days. I've got my hands on a pair of binoculars that record in infrared as well. So you could be just holding up your eyes.
How cool is that? I love toys.
Yeah. And this is one I believe everybody needs if you're going to be looking for
I'm the world's oldest 14-year-old, trust me. No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I highly recommend if you're going to be venturing to look for these, you need to stay safe, of course, but when you're looking for them at night, because in some cases, I do believe that they have the ability to illuminate their bodies as a way of communication and warning, like evading prey.
Okay. That's a common denominator amongst researchers doing what I consider valuable research.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a common story amongst people that just have sightings.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to personally bring that up, the illumination of the chest.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be for breeding, a warning, communication, all those would be unknowns to anybody like me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a common denominator that I've heard from many, many researchers that I can't even say their names because they've asked me not to. But I'll bet you $1 to a donut we know the same people. But that's a common denominator.
Yeah.
Is the luminescence.
Yeah, and Ken, while I've got you, I know that I've had a lot of your time already. But I just had one last thing I wanted to ask you about, your Mother Earth website.
Yes, sir.
I'd love to be able to show that to the audience, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. Now, we haven't updated it in a long time. Sometimes there's two reasons. One, we haven't got around to it. I don't know if that's a good reason or a bad reason. Two is we've ran into some problems with other caving organizations. Until they get to know us and actually meet me or some of our team, we have 125 members. Mm-hmm. They consider us the outlaws of caving. We're considered the pirates of caving, which is an honor we completely embrace. In fact, we never even gained any respect until we got real PO'd at White Sheep Caves up in Upper Sequoia and seeing broken test vials and just so much garbage left behind by not tourists, not average sport cavers. It was all left behind from the 70s and early 80s. It was dated. The vials and broken glass also throughout the cave. We went up with 2 big contractor bags.
Yeah.
This is at 10,000 feet in the mountains. We got 60-pound backpacks back at base camp.
Mm-hmm.
We filled these garbage bags up, compressed everything down as we could, and filled these garbage bags up. And we had to haul those, thank God it was downhill, we had to haul those back out of the mountains. By the time we got to our vehicles, which were parked around 8,000 feet at Mineral King,
yeah,
I was pretty PO'd.
I'm sure.
I spent the night there, and I says, look, we're going to the visitor center at Grant Grove tomorrow. And who wants to go with me? So what are you going to do? Is I'm going to go give this trash back to them. That's where the Cave Research Foundation was founded at the time. They had one of the offices there. And anyway, long story short, we made it there the next morning, walked in with the trash bags. This is the tourist center. It's a Sunday. It's full of German tourists and people from all over the world are there to see the big redwoods. And we walked, excuse me, sir, excuse me. We walked in and we just started dumping the trash on the ground inside the visitor center. Now, stay with me, okay? We're not bad people, so stay with me.
Okay.
So we dumped all this stuff out. And we still had we put our caving helmets and equipment partially on as we went in there. And then security was naturally called up. And so a couple of park rangers come over. One of them had his hand on his holster. You know, they were not intimidating to us in any way.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, who are you? Are you ELF? ELF would be the Earth Liberation Front. Those guys are fanaticals or radicals. They're the ones that put bombs on logging trucks. Are you Earth First? No, we're Mother Earth Underground. Which organization is that? What is going on here? We're just bringing back some stuff to you all left behind up there in that there cave at White Chief Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
They go, what? I said, yeah, get Frank Hertz down here from the Cave Research Foundation. I'd like to have a little chat with him. So, well, we don't know what's going on here. I said, look, just get him down here. And he comes down, and we were always kind of a burr under his saddle anyway. And maybe you have to forgive me, I'm a bit of an old country boy. So he comes down, and he recognizes, Kenny, what's going on here? I said, you guys have left this stuff up there for close to 30 years. When were you going to haul it out of that cave system? It's pristine now. Would you mind leaving it that way?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, and so everything's all calmed down. There was a couple of people over the counter says, ma'am, could you please let us know where your broom closet is? We need a broom, some dustpans, we've got some bags with us. We'll be cleaning up our mess here. We cleaned it all up, and excuse us, where are the dumpsters? We'd like to take this out to your dumpster. We even separated what was recyclable. Well, that hit the locals crazy. We went out on blogs, and somebody got a hold of some Jay and Abby Snow, who were running one of the cave tourists. They were tour guides for one of the caves at their Crystal Cave.
Mm-hmm.
They loved it. They just absolutely loved it because they realized in caving all these 400 caves in that park alone that only 2 are known of. That they were sick of the trash being there, so we'd earned a reputation that day as the quicker cave picker-uppers. Now, it seems to me we might be ripping up bounty paper towels there, but I'm not sure. So we became the pirates of caving. So the next picture on our website, which we actually took down, we've had 3 websites. That one's been there for about 15 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But was a picture. Every time we took a picture of us, we had the USA flag with our caving crew at base camp, and a good old Jolly Rogers, and every picture was taken with an eye patch over our eye and was sent to Frank Hertz of the Cave Research Foundation.
Mm.
And then some of the people at the head of the National Speleological Society got a hold of the story, did a big article on it. So I've been a National Speleological member for years, but that was mostly for information. I don't do conventions.
Yeah.
These people are all the ones that have the name tags, a glass of their finest drink at a Holiday Inn, and go to conventions nationwide to talk about caves. Mm-hmm. Now, if we've got money to do that, we're going caving. We're not conventioners.
Yeah.
We don't do the Bigfoot conventions because of the same thing. I know people have fun with it. There's some great people there. Not knocking it all. Ain't our thing.
Yeah.
We'd rather do a Motel 6 on the way to a cave.
There you go.
Or sleep in a truck rest stop. But if there's anything else I can give you before I know you probably got to go,
I think
ask.
This has been fantastic. I think the audience is just going to love this, and I am really grateful for your time. I know I've probably taken quite a bit of it.
You're a friend. If there's anything you ever need, or if there's anything I can ever do for you, don't hesitate to ask. My door and my phone are always open.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
the same guy. I have been since childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I shall have all my same friends. I don't burn bridges.
Mm-hmm.
I don't lie. I still rely on a man's handshake as long as it's COVID friendly this day from 6 feet away. Strange new world, isn't it, brother?
Yeah, it sure is.
And by the way, for your audience, if they are listening, we'll hope everybody out there is safe. I hope your families are safe. God bless you all.
Yeah.
And get out there. Keep the cameras rolling. You never know what you're going to find. One thing you're going to find is that you didn't sit at home and just watch another repeat of another darn show.
You heard it from
It'll
him.
still be there when you get back.
Yeah. Get outside. Get adventurous. Go exploring. And be safe at the same
On
time.
our website, which is MotherEarthUnderground.com, we go into a little bit of detail on that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want me plugging myself, there's one more thing. It's not for me.
Sure.
We ask that there's no political posts go there because we want to keep it outdoorsy. But we are Bigfoot and pterodactyl and cryptozoological friendly. Let's just put it that way.
Oh.
But we have a Facebook page called Backcountry 101. Now, on that, we discuss everything from the proper ways to pack a backpack, how to identify wild edibles. There are a lot of Bigfoot stuff there. If there's wares that you yourselves make that are outdoor related in some way, as long as you're not pushing them for another company, or if you have something there that you're selling, some art, something like that, join up. Post some pictures of it. We just don't want to see you selling Chinese sunglasses, which is nothing wrong with Chinese sunglasses, don't get me wrong. But if you're making it and you want to sell it and it's outdoors related, you can do that. But we want you to post your adventures, and you're going to find out more about what we all are, which is people who just like to get out and take the family and take some friends and go have some fun.
Amen to that. That's what life is should be
One
about.
more thing, please, when you park, anywhere you go, pick up the trash around your car. Maybe somebody will catch that hint and pick up the trash around their car.
Yep. Right on.
Okay?
Ken, thank you so much for coming on and telling us
Very welcome.
fantastic information. And don't be a stranger anytime. I love seeing your post on Facebook. I'm going to continue to follow you. You be safe, and God bless your family and you and the 17.
Okay, and if you'll let me know offline where I could probably let my wife, is there a way for people to listen to this?
Yes, absolutely. So what you want to do is when this posts, you can go to Facebook.com, the Ropen Cryptozoology Network. That's where it'll be. You could also find me under Crypto Guerra in case you can't locate that one. But they'll be there. It'll also be going to YouTube as well.
Okay.
And it'll also be going CCTV Oregon as well as Oregon Public Broadcasting. So be on the lookout for all those. So again,
well, cool beans.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure.
Be careful out there then, and y'all have a nice evening.
You too. Thank you again, Ken.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. That was Ken Gentry. I'm really, really glad he came on the show and on the network to explain and tell about his stories that he has had. I told you to be in for a treat. Definitely. He's a great guy, and I'm finally happy to have the chance to be able to chat with him after all this time. And all the cave exploring he's done in California and all the good work he's provided for those areas. Thank you so much, Ken, for all the work that you do, and I really hope that you'll be back on your feet and the back injury will subside. And you'll be back to doing what you love, and that's cave exploring. So a lot of information he shared, and it's extremely fascinating, but there's something I'd like to point out as well that I think is important for everybody. He mentioned that they went hunting for pterosaurs in Fresno, California, in the 1800s, the late 1800s. Well, he's correct. There is an article that was printed. I suggest everybody read that article. And this was mind-opening right here. If you're someone who's still trying to wrestle with the idea of pterosaurs existing, here's some more proof for you. There was a person who owned a certain part of land in Fresno, California, and he had been spotting these things. And he would say, okay, we're going to go hunting for them. I think they might even killed one. But he describes them having the heads of crocodiles or alligators. Well, some pterosaurs fit that description. Isn't that something? Old article, but you can get this online. And if you don't find it, come to the network. It'll be there for you. You can read it. Check it out. Very, very good article. helps point everybody into the facts in the right direction about these creatures that are still alive. Yes, they're alive. They're still out there. The Sasquatch part, those rocks being hurled, isn't that something? No, I don't believe that those are Argo pelters. All right. Now, first of all, I want to make something very clear. I did do a video on the Argo pelter in Oregon, a creature of Oregon, but this is a very small creature. It's not the size of the Sasquatch, and it's not as well known, and it has a great chance of being completely fake. All right. But it still was a fun creature to create and to show to the audience because it does fit in the realm of cryptozoology. So I don't believe it was an Argo pelter. I believe what they were encountering were Sasquatch. Okay. They were the ones throwing those rocks. Whew. Imagine that, you're getting attacked by Sasquatch. But I told you this was going to be a fascinating trip, and you were going to learn a lot from Ken Gentry. Going to have him back on the show again. I'm not sure when, but I'm sure there's so much more to tell, especially about the Backcountry 101. I'd like to hear more about that. As he went into he went into some of his website, but as soon as you get a chance, check that out too. You can post things there as well, just to make sure that you keep it non-political. Okay. So that's the show for today. I hope you all enjoyed listening and hearing wherever you were. Extremely fascinating. And it's going to get more fascinating as we continue to have more people come forward and talk about their accounts, eyewitnesses, creature features, you name it. Do I do this because I like it? Nah. I do it because I love it. That's why I have this network. So if you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to do so. ropentracker@gmail.com. ROPEN. That's today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Before I go, though, remember, very important, seek the truth. Keep your eyes on the sky, and God bless every one of you on the other side of the screen. See you next time.